Stay tuned for part 2 when I break down the origins behind all of the goblins and ghouls and spirits and monsters that we associate with the holiday. Thank you for staying tuned. Welcome to part 2. Today we're going to be breaking down the origins of the spooky monsters associated with Halloween, and since I'm a YouTuber, I will be putting them in a tier list. I'm King Trout, and patience is a virtue. Today's video is sponsored by Exter. Gone are the days of sitting on your wallet feeling like you're incubating a brick with the Exter Wallet Pro. It has a slim, stylish design and is available in a variety of colors and designs for both him and her. It's got a nifty pop-up mechanism, so your cards are easily available, and you feel like James Bond when you're going to pay for things. Plus, it's got RFID protection, so the only worry you have is losing your wallet. But wait, what's this? It's the Exter Finder card, which pairs to your phone so you can GPS track your wallet. Exter also has something called the Travel Vacuum Kit, which may unironically be one of my favorite things ever. I travel all the time, and for some reason have an intensive aversion to packing more than one bag. Like, you know, people will bring carry-ons and you put it in the overhead container. Well, I only bring a personal item, one backpack, everything in there. Check this out, it's got 4 days worth of clothes in it. Went to Florida recently, and I packed 5 days worth of clothes. Fits very easily in a backpack. Super duper convenient, I love this thing. Right now, Exter's running a sale where you can get up to 35% off site-wide, and you can get an extra 10% off if you use code King Trout. Click the links below. Thank you very much to Exter for sponsoring the video. Back to it. Vampires. Imagine Europe in the 1300s. Rats, filth, and zero concept of germ theory. You mean to tell me there are tiny bugs living on me that I can't see that are making me sick? Sure, crazy. When villagers started dying off in droves, those left alive needed someone to blame. And who better to blame than someone who cannot defend themselves? Dead people. Bodies were exhumed, and when they were dug up, they were found to have swollen bellies with dark blood around their mouths. Now you, with your highfalutin knowledge of modern science, might blame this on decomposition gases, but you'd be wrong. The real answer is they got bellies full of meat, because they've been munching on people. That's what they thought anyway. The word vampire first appears in Eastern Europe in the 1720s, and there are Austrian records documenting alleged outbreaks wherein villagers would exhume corpses believed to be these undead cannibals. They would behead them, stake them, burn them. It was plague logic. If people are getting sick, you need to destroy the supposed carrier, which in this case they believed to be dead people. Fast forward to 1897 when Bram Stoker wrapped up every Victorian British fear, foreigners, death, sex, female lust, into one caped villain. Partially inspired by the very real Vlad the Impaler Dracula, the book was an instant hit. Despite the fact that it sucks, it is so boring. Despite my opinions, though, the book was a hit and is one of, if not the most famous horror novels of all time. Which, in fairness, what is scarier than a Romanian? So, the association between vampires and horror was well established in our popular culture. Hollywood took the wheel in the 1930s when Bela Lugosi took the role of Dracula and completely hammered what we think of when we conceptualize a vampire into the cultural zeitgeist. By the 80s, the Lost Boys threw a little punk twist on vampires. 2008, Twilight, Obama-era vampire, they sparkle. The movies really aren't that bad, I'll be honest. I've watched them with a girlfriend before. Anyway, vampires, parasitism, romanticized. They symbolize lust, contagion, what goes on in the shadows of our society. Where do vampires sit on our tier list? F tier, immediately. Worst monster. Hate vampires, they're lame, and they're gay. What are their weaknesses? Being beheaded. Okay, me too. Stake to the heart. Okay, me too. Garlic. One of the most common spices in the world kills them. Garlic. It's in everything.
In garlic sauce.
Sunlight. The sun kills them. Christianity kills them. Shit-ass monster. Get him out of here! F tier. Put him below F tier. Next up, werewolves. Back in the olden times, Europe had a habit of calling anything or anyone who was a little too wild a wolf. In Greek myth, Lycaon, this guy served Zeus a baby for dinner. Bold strategy. How'd it pan out? Zeus didn't like it, and as punishment, turned him into a wolf. Hence the term lycanthropy. In the modern day, wolves are seen as an animal, of which we completely misunderstand the social structure, because one guy lied about it back in the 70s, and everybody still believes that to be the case, even though he was like, no, I made all of that up. Yeah, the wolf culture doesn't work anything like you think it does. But for the majority of human history, wolves were a serious problem. Not only will they potentially kill your livestock, they'll potentially kill you. Imagine you're a farmer in rural France in the 1400s, and then your wife is like, I'm going to go wash the clothes in the river, and then just never comes home because she got devoured by wolves. That was a thing that would happen, like all the time. There's a reason most of our folk stories that originate in Europe have wolves as the bad guy. Medieval Europe between the 14 and 1700s basically turned werewolfism into a moral panic. Some livestock goes missing. I don't know who did it. Maybe it was that guy. I bet he becomes a wolf at night. I don't really care for his personality. It was basically the male equivalent of a witch hunt. The church framed it as a sin of the flesh. Wolves represented chaos, hunger, and male lust. The men accused of being wolfmen were usually rural outsiders, loners, or the mentally ill. Regardless, the metaphor is quite obvious. Werewolves represent the darkness inside all of us that's only a thin layer away from being released. Man versus beast, ego versus id. Once again, Hollywood solidified the template, in this case in 1941 with The Wolfman, the story of a tragic loner, cursed by nature. And then the story gets renewed, every 10, 15 years or so. American Werewolf in London, peak cinema. I also forgot to mention that the oldest surviving written fiction that we have, the Epic of Gilgamesh, also tells the story of a man who is transformed into a wolf as punishment. Werewolves are the oldest legend because they're the best legend. It's so simple. It's so simple. Humanity's terrified at what lies inside of us, what we're capable of becoming when we lose our restraint. Where do werewolves lie on our tier list? S tier, obviously. Actually better than S tier. They're cool. They're jacked. I'm a werewolf. Double S tier. SS tier. Maybe not that one. Triple S tier. Give them an extra S. Just not the two S's one. Retrospectively, I shouldn't have started with my least favorite monster and then my favorite monster. The rest are going to be in the middle of those two. Next up, zombies. Zombies began with enslaved Africans and Haitian Vodou. In this Haitian belief, a zombie, with an N and no E at the end, was a soul that was either trapped or reanimated and forced to do the bidding of a sorcerer. It's slavery turned into spiritual metaphor. And in the original mythology of the zombie, these Haitian Vodou communities weren't afraid of, zombies biting people. The fear and the horror came from the concept of losing your personal autonomy for forever, which conceptually is much more terrifying than somebody wanting to bite you. Anyway, when U.S. Marines occupied Haiti in 1915, they took the myth back home with them, stripped it of context, and basically made it just an exotic horror story. Once again, Hollywood came in, turned it into a movie, White Zombie, where the concept was still kind of there. A sorcerer controls a woman's will, her magic. Nobody cares about that. Fast forward to George Romero, 1968. Night of the Living Dead essentially birthed the concept of the modern zombie. Mindless, flesh-eating, apocalyptic. Romero's zombies were an incredibly ham-fisted allegory for conformity and consumerism without thought and blah, 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 blah. Either way, he birthed the concept of the modern zombie. By the 2000s, post-9/11 paranoia and pandemics birthed the so-called fast zombie. Because, as a concept, zombies are a hell of a lot scarier if they're not slowly shuffling towards you. Modern zombie fiction tends to follow a pretty similar format. Fear of contagion, fear of collapse, fear of community. Don't even know who we can trust anymore in this world. Where do zombies fit on our tier list? I'm gonna go solid B, a little bit better than average. The only reason I put them at B instead of A, because as a concept it's fun, is because of that bacon era, I call it, the early 2010s. There was way too much zombie-related media. really, really got played out. Granted, at the time, I was like 13. I was a young teenager, so it was fun. You talk to your buddies about like what your zombie survival plan is. I had the zombie survival guide. World War Z was huge. B, very, very okay, but very played out. Next up, witches. Witches, as a concept, are basically as old as humans are. Somebody nefariously practicing magic for personal gain. They exist as a concept in basically every culture's folklore, and if we're being honest with ourselves, historically, most of the time, they were used as an excuse to punish or control women. Except in the case of the Salem witch trials. I made like a whole 30-minute long video about that one. That was women being mean to other women. There were men involved, but that one was the fault of women. Well, teenage girls, but concept stands. They're so deeply embedded in our culture, too, that there isn't even really like an anchor point for, where they started or where they came from. Like Dracula, the novel, like clearly cemented vampirism into our culture, but that's not really the case with witches. That being said, the reason they're often depicted with green skin is directly because of the Wizard of Oz. The only reason they gave her green skin is because they had this new technology, Technicolor film, and they wanted her to like visually pop. And they were like, green's not a human skin color, so, it's kind of scary, I guess. The association stuck. And now they've been co-opted by women who reek of patchouli and think rocks have magic powers. #witch talk. Where do witches sit on our tier list? Solid D tier. Rock solid D tier. I cannot think of a more D tier monster than a witch. Why would I be afraid of a single woman who lives alone in the woods? Rock solid D tier. Next up, ghosts. Ghosts are another one that have pretty much always been around as a concept in every human culture. Where does our soul go when we die? Heaven, hell, eternal nothingness, or the upstairs bathroom? Sometimes ghosts represent what a culture represses. Injustice, regret, debt. Sometimes they represent the concept of unfinished business. Somebody dies before they wrap up their earthly deeds, and now they're cursed to wander in this spiritual form eternally. Historically and generationally, nobody else was nearly as obsessed with death, and by extension ghosts, as the Victorians were. Newspapers serialized ghost stories, seances were huge social events, and fraudulent mediums made bank talking to the dead through Morse code. People were bored back then. It was basically a way to monetize grief. It's estimated that 40% of people worldwide believe in ghosts. Including me. I believe in ghosts. I lived in a haunted house. I'm serious. Weird things used to happen in that house. Noises, things would move. There were knocks on the doors in the middle of the night. Moved out of the house, nothing happened. Was it a gas leak? No, I checked for a gas leak. I'm serious. That house was haunted. Also, when you live in a haunted house, it's nothing like the movies. It's not like, ooh, spooky things are happening and I need to investigate as the plot develops and I find out what's going on. No, they're just incredibly annoying. Ghosts are so annoying. You're like sitting in the living room trying to watch a movie and they're like knocking shit over upstairs. His name was Roger. He was the previous homeowner. He built the house back in the 40s, died of a heart attack in the living room. I found this out like 2 years after I lived there. Super annoying ghost. Incredibly annoying ghost. Every time I would remodel rooms, it really pissed him off. He'd act up. I'm not sorry, Roger. You've been dead for 30 years. Get over it. It's my house now. That was a different house. It's not this house. This house isn't haunted. Yet. Where do ghosts sit on our tier list? Ghosts. What a fun word to say. Ghosts. C. They're the most C-list creature I could even think of. I'm not even going to elaborate on that. Well, technically I am with this sentence because they're like the most baseline monster, Ghosts. Ghosts. C. Capital C. Capitalize that C. Mummies. Ancient Egyptians believed the soul, which they called the Ka, required the body to be preserved in order to reunite in the afterlife. Through the lengthy process of mummification, this preservation was possible. Mummies weren't horror, they were sacred engineering. Europeans saw this and thought, cool, let's snort them. I'm dead serious, too. From the Middle Ages through the 1800s, ground mummy powder, called mummia, was sold as medicine throughout Europe. An ancient religious rite performed to the exacting standards in order to ensure that your body can reunite with your soul in the afterlife. Until a few thousand years later, when a British guy digs you up, grinds you into a powder, and rails a line of you. By the 19th century, colonial archaeology turned Egypt into a theme park. As previously mentioned, Victorians were obsessed with death for some reason, and mummy unwrapping parties became all the rage for the Victorian elite. Sipping champagne while somebody peels back 3,000-year-old bandages. Which I don't even understand, as a concept. There's no mystery to it, you know? It's always going to be a crispy dead guy wrapped up in there. It's not like there's going to be... there's never going to be anything different. It's a crispy dead guy, 100% of the time. When Tutankhamun's tomb was opened in 1922, several members of the expedition died within a year. Worth noting, most of them died of bacterial infections or fungal infections. There's a belief that they may have been exposed to a fungus inside of the tomb that led to infections, which led to death. Also, there is the fact it was such a large expedition that several of the members dying within a year isn't even statistically anomalous, especially in the 1920s. But either way, the media ran with it. The Curse of the Mummy. I meant the Curse of the Pharaohs. They called it the Curse of the Pharaohs, not the Curse of the Mummy, but you wouldn't have known if I didn't clear that up just now. In 1932, the film The Mummy turned that superstition into romantic tragedy. Also, we are learning how integral to our culture cinema was in the 1930s and 40s. The 1999 remake, starring my boy B. Fraze, turned it into an adventure. It's one of the greatest films of all time, and I'm not just saying that because I was a little kid when it came out. Shit still holds up. Where do mummies sit on our tier list? I'm going to give them A tier. Instantly recognizable. You know, they got the ancient mystery surrounding them. They got that 1999 film starring Brendan Fraser. Great flick. Check it out if you haven't seen it. Great flick. The only thing holding me back from S tier is that tweet about what mummies do when they get you. Because I think about that tweet every day. In discussing the origins of these monsters, we've mentioned nearly every country in the world so far. England, Romania, ancient Babylon, Egypt, Greece, Europe. I think I mentioned Austria at one point. 7 of the 8 countries in the world. Now it's time to talk about the 8th and most important country in the world, America. The Headless Horseman. America imported a lot of its monsters from other cultures, primarily Europe, but in 1820, Washington Irving invented a specifically American monster, the Headless Horseman. A soldier decapitated in war, doomed to ride eternally in search for his head. It's a very distinctly post-revolution myth. It's America's first folklore celebrity, and the symbolism? Oh, chef's kiss! America is a nation founded in a blood-drenched revolution, and the first piece of folklore we create is the story of a soldier who lost his head and is doomed to blindly and mindlessly charge through the night with an insatiable bloodlust. Oh! Put the Headless Horseman in triple S tier. Put him up there next to the werewolf. Demons and the devil. This one's pretty obvious. Historically and culturally, America has always been a Christian nation. Fight me about that one in the comments. It's pretty easy to prove. All you have to do is crack open a history book. That being said, it's kind of obvious that the enemy of our God would be associated with evil and darkness. Insofar as the modern representation of demons and the devil basically gets its origins in medieval European Christian art. If you're going to depict something that represents the antithesis of the Christian God, it would make sense to draw inspiration from pagan gods. Most of these pagan deities were representations of things like fertility or a bountiful harvest, and so they were represented with signs of fertility or a bountiful harvest, like cows or goats. And the association between these pagan deities usually represented, with a man with a goat's head, then came to represent demons and the devil in Christian imagery. The church created a visual language for evil that is so heavily ingrained in our culture that it's 2,000 years later and metal bands are still using it on the cover of their albums. Where do demons and the devil sit on my tier list? They don't. I don't want them on my tier list. Get them out of here. Put them down in hell. All right, just for technicality's sake, since in the video last year I said I would talk about goblins and ghouls, we're going to talk about goblins and ghouls. Goblins originated in the Middle Ages in Europe and were basically just annoying little spiritual pests. If the year was 1265 and you're in modern-day France and you lost your car keys, you blame it on a goblin. Really nothing special to them, just kind of annoying. Goblins, C tier, very mid creature, just an annoying little pest. I dig the fact that they collect knickknacks and shiny things, because I do the same thing. C tier, goblins, C tier. Goblins, goblins. Ghouls. Ghoul comes from the Arabic word ghoul, which means to seize. They're an ancient Islamic myth of ghosts that lure you off of the trail and steal your shit. They're ghosts that steal. They're larcenous ghosts. D tier. Skeletons. While the origin of skeletons is hotly debated, many agree that they were invented in 1947 by Richard Skeleton when he first discovered them. Yeah, this one's pretty obvious. You see a skeleton, there's a very clear implication that the person it belonged to is no longer with us. What with? Because they're a skeleton now. Although, I was just thinking about this the other day, where it's like, did the first person who saw a skeleton know what it was? Unless they, actively watched someone decompose into a skeleton, you'd think, if they were just walking through the woods and you see a human skeleton and you didn't have the context to know that's what's inside you, would you be like, what the fuck is that thing? I feel like it's probably, biologically ingrained in us to know what a human skeleton is. I don't know. Interesting thought experiment. Skeletons. A tier. Classic spooky. You look at a skeleton, you go, oh, that's a dead guy. A tier. Animal speed round. Black cats, S tier, sick ass animal. Sorry you were associated with evil. Bats, S tier, they eat mosquitoes. I fuck with bats heavy. Rabies, not cool. You guys need to fix that one. Owls, A tier. At the end of the day, it's just a bird. But it's a night bird, and that's kind of cool. And they got talons and stuff. A tier. Scarecrows. Scarecrows aren't a monster. They're an inanimate object used to frighten birds. F tier. And that is all the monsters I can think of off the top of my head. Pull up the list. Yes, I'm happy with that. Monsters are a reflection of our cultural fears. When disease spreads and we want to invent another reason to be racist towards Romanians, we get vampires. When carnal lust threatens traditional society, we get werewolves. And when guilt festers, we get ghosts. But at the end of the day, the one thing we can all agree on is that Brandon Herrera is a lame gay vampire, and I'm a cool jacked werewolf. As always, I've been King Trout. Happy Halloween. Thank you for watching. I'll see you when I see you. Love you. Bye.